Now come to some examples of pollination. You have to study two examples. First is of sweet pea and second is of maize. In sweet pea, pollination takes place by insects. This is a flower of sweet pea. It has 5 petals in it. This one is the standard petal. This is two wing petals, and this is keel petal. This one is formed by the fusion of two petals, right? So standard petal is like this. इसके अंदर की तरफ two wing petals and this side is keel petal. Now, how the pollination takes place? When any insect visit this flower, when it sits on the wing petals of the flower, the wing petals are depressed. These are wing petals. You can see these are wing petals. So when it sits there, suppose the bee reaches the flower, the bee thrusts its long tongue in search of nectar. In this struggle, the wing petals of the flower are depressed. The wing petals along with the keel petals are forced down. तो ये जो wing petals हैं, keel petals हैं, these are forced down. When these are forced down, then the inner part में क्या है? Reproductive parts हैं that are exposed. That parts are exposed. And suppose the pollen grains are present there, that pollen grains get stick to the legs of bees. And when this bee reaches some another pea plant, then that pollen grains are transferred to that pea plant. Second is the example of maize. Maize is pollinated by wind. As the wind blows, the pollens from the hanging anthers इसमें hanging होते हैं, तो pollens from the hanging anthers are carried away by the wind. And here the stigma is also feathery and hanging. So when the pollen grains reaches there, stigma receives the pollen grains, it catches the pollen, traps the pollen grains, and pollination takes place. Now after pollination comes fertilization. Fertilization is fusion of male and female gamete. Right? The fusion of male and female gamete is called fertilization. Now in flowering plants, the pollen grain produces two male gametes. Pollen grain has reached the stigma. This pollen grain produces two male gametes. And the ovule inside the ovary produces the female gamete. Ovule inside the ovary, female gamete is present there. It means this male gamete now needs to reach the ovule so that it can fuse with the female gamete.